the downturn, they start to sell their shares. And again, like I just mentioned earlier, when more people are selling than buying, it causes the price to deteriorate. And eventually, this turns into a snowball effect because when these people start to sell, the price goes down even more, which causes more people to want to sell. And eventually, everybody's selling, nobody's buying. And then, as far as the prices of stock, the bottom just falls out. It completely tanks. And the actual stock market crash occurs in October of 1929. It's actually October 29th, 1929 is when it happens. And this date, as I put on the slide, is known as Black Friday. Black Tuesday, excuse me. Black Friday is the shopping day. But Black Tuesday is the day that is remembered for the stock market crash. Sorry about that. I'm too far along in the video to start it over, so I'm just going to excuse myself. I hope you do the same. And so that's what happens. Now, the next couple slides, what I'm referring to is the effects that the stock market crash has on everyday ordinary people. All right, there's several things that take place kind of as a domino effect of the market crashing. One of the first things that I mentioned is the banking crisis. Okay, and so let me just kind of explain this before I go any further. First of all, the way that banks operate is by lending money to individuals and or businesses, and those people have to pay that money back with interest, and the interest is kind of how they make their profit, because if you're just loaning money to get back the same amount, you're not going to make any money. And if you do this on a large enough scale, then you're making a lot of money. So first of all, that's how banks make their money. Now, because the stock market was doing so well during the 20s, not only were a lot of people investing whatever they could into the market, but some people were actually borrowing money, which means it's money they didn't really have at the time. They were borrowing money to put into the market because they're kind of looking at it like, man, this thing's going up, it's going up. I'm going to borrow this money. I'm going to use it to make myself money. Then I'm going to pay that loan back, and I'm going to be good. And ideally, yeah, that could be a great thing unless the market turns, which it does. And so you've got several things happening right now. You've got banks that are also invested in the market themselves. You've got individuals who have borrowed money from the banks that have put that money in the market who cannot pay it back. And you've got people that are losing their jobs because of the stock market crash, and they're also unable to pay their loans back. Well, when banks are loaning out money and it's not getting paid back, then their business, the banking business, is not working. And so the result of this is many banks close. Something else that takes place during this time is called bank runs. And I'm going to talk about this just for a second, but a lot of times when people, especially elderly people, this is not a dig at them, this is just because of the time period they live in, anytime something kind of starts going a little bit unorthodox, people initially, their reaction is, I've got to get all my money out of the bank so that I have access to it. And the reason why a lot of people, especially again elderly people today, have that mindset is because during this period of time, a lot of these banks closed and the money was not insured the way that it is today. And so if you did not get your money out of the bank and the bank shut down, well, whatever money that you had put into the bank is just gone. And that would just be a terrible feeling because all this money has been made working hard, doing this, doing that. And like I said, that's not really something we have to worry about today, and I'll explain that later. It actually comes about through one of the New Deal programs, which we'll talk about in Section 2. But anyway, you had bank runs, you had bank closings. I think kind of a pretty close ballpark is during this period of time throughout the United States, you had 2,200 banks that actually shut their doors because people had cleaned them out as far as trying to withdraw as much as they could, and they were not bringing in any money as far as debt collections because people didn't have money to pay them. And make sure I've got everything off this slide. I mentioned this before we got out of school. But I want to kind of bring it back up, kind of refresh your memory, because this applies directly. I talked about what stimulates the economy, and that is money circulation. And what makes the economy go bad is when money is stagnant. It means money's not being made, and when money's not being made, it's not being spent, it's not being distributed to all these other people, and that makes it very, very difficult for people to make money or especially expand, creating new businesses and that sort of thing. That's what's happening right now. All these people are scared to death. Some people have lost everything anyway. The people that have anything left, they're sitting on it. They don't want to go out. They don't want to spend money. They're going to conserve as much as they possibly can. And so money's not being spent. When money's not being spent, production does not have to be as high as it once was. When production doesn't have to be as high, businesses do not require as many workers. When they don't require as many workers, or when overhead becomes too much, they have layoffs and they cut back. And so a lot of people are losing their jobs. When people lose their jobs, they don't have money. When they don't have money, they can't spend money. Okay, you kind of see where I'm going with this. Everything is kind of tied in together. Okay, and that's what's taking place right now. People are losing their jobs. People are not having money. They're not spending money. The economy becomes at a halt. It's stagnant. There's no money circulation. And that's the reason for it. And so this next slide, and some of this is going to be something I've already said, but something I'll just kind of go through it. The next slide, I've kind of broke down the causes of the Great Depression, and just kind of going through these. And this is kind of the reverse order of what I just said it. But when things are going good, production goes up. When production goes up, in order to meet the high demands of production, they have to hire new workers, which means businesses expand, which means that more people have jobs. If more people have jobs, more money is being made, and if more money is being made, more money is being spent. Okay, so it's kind of right the opposite of what I just said. When everything's going good, these are the things that happen. But when everything's going bad, the opposite of every bit of that happens. You know, if that kind of makes sense. And all that's on the slide for you if you're reading this. Actually, this whole deal with the business cycle is what I just mentioned, so I'm not going to just keep repeating myself, keep y'all from having to hear me any longer than you have to. But one thing that it says at the end of this that I just want to touch on, it says eventually the economy is going to bounce back, and I'm not talking about the American economy, I'm just talking about economics in general. These things come in waves. It come in waves. And this thing collectively is known as the business cycle. When everything is going good, when it peaks, when it goes back down, when it rebounds, when it comes back up. This is a constant cycle. And the best way to, number one, to make money, and number two, to make sure you don't lose a ton of money, is by being aware of where we are in the business cycle. Okay, because if things have been going great for a long time, eventually, like I said earlier, what goes up must come down. And if things have been kind of rough for a period of time, eventually they're going to have to kind of come upward again. So that's what the business cycle is. Now, kind of changing direction, the president during this period of time, his name's Herbert Hoover. All right, and first of all, kind of in a similar situation to today. President Hoover is facing a situation that nobody before him has had to deal with. So there's not a cookie cutter blueprint that's, okay, this is what I do when this happens. Okay, there's not. And he's probably one of the most heavily criticized presidents that we have. And are there some stuff he could have done different? Sure. But, you know, nobody can really put themselves in his shoes, because you know, he's dealing with something that nobody's ever had to deal with before. But one thing